योगेन चित्तस्य पदेन वाचां मलं शरीरस्य च वैद्यकेन योपाकरोतं प्रवरं मुनीनां पतञ्जलिं प्राञ्जलिरानतोऽस्मि। आबाहुपुरुषाकारं शङ्खचक्रासिधारिणं सहस्रशिरसं श्वेतं प्रणमामि पतञ्जलिम्।
The asana that we'd be seeing today is Prasarita Padottanasana. Prasarita means stretched or expanded. True to that meaning, you can see how Prasarita Padottanasana delivers a wide stretch throughout the body. We'll be showing this in two parts, the concave back position and the position where the head is rested down. Now we will be discussing the parts of the body that are important to know for Prasarita Padottanasana. The first of these is, she will stand in Tadasana and we will demonstrate the parts. The first is the sternum, right at the base of the chest, connecting the two sides of the chest. At the middle is a bone called the sternum bone. At the base of the sternum, where the bone ends, is a soft gap. When you climb up all the way towards the notch of the throat, that length from the down all the way to the top is the sternum. The collarbones from the top of the sternum, like a garland, the two bones that connect the sternum towards the very edges of the shoulder, the collarbone, turning behind. The back ribs, right until where the rib cage ends, the two floating ribs, all the way to from at the top by the sides of the neck. The entire area has the rib cage. Here, the back of this we would refer to as the back ribs. Turning to the side, taking your arms to the side. Very importantly for Prasarita Padottanasana, we need to know the structure of the hip. The entire surface is the pelvis. Within that, we are talking about the pelvic girdle, hip bone, and how it connects to the bones of the leg. This is the length of the leg. In the leg, this is the hip, the pelvic girdle. Approximately in the center of the hip is where the head of the femur is, and that connects to the length of the femur bone. The femur bone is the bone within the thigh bone. Coming down, for the shin we have two bones, the tibia and the fibula. Ending down is the calcaneus or the heel bone. All of these bones should be aligned in a single line. Anatomically also it falls in a single line. These three bones must be aligned in any standing pose. We'll show you parts of the foot as well, turning to face that way. One foot lifted up. This entire portion is the heel or heel pad. Within that, at the back part of the heel is a firm portion. As you see, the rest of the portions of the heel are a little more bouncy. The back center of the heel is a little more firm. That's where the heel bone is. Once again, important to note. Turning to the side and stepping with one leg forward. Here is the arch of the foot. The arch of the foot in any pose, standing pose, should never drop. This would be a dropped arch where it touches or hits, sinks to the floor. This is a lifted arch where you can clearly see the cup-shaped arch of the foot. Important position to know, and that naturally will add more weight to the outer edge of the foot. So you have to be on the heel, spread all parts of the feet evenly on the ground, but also hold the outer edge of the foot in such a way that the arch remains lifted. In this position, the kneecap must not hang down. The patella must be tightened and lifted up in such a way that the quadricep muscle is kept in its place. The quadricep otherwise will put its load on the knee, That shouldn't happen. Tighten the knee and suck the patella upward in such a way that the quadricep muscles are firm and taut. I will be addressing some important areas of the spine that is very much in need for Prasarita Padottanasana. All areas of the spine are important. Within that, some specific areas I will be showing. Firstly, the back part of the spine is called the posterior spine, the back side of the spine. If I show you, when I bend forward, you see these little bumps. That is the posterior spine. In the front, against which the organs lie, inside the body, is the anterior spine. In any pose, the anterior spine must be tall and high. It should never sink down. So the anterior in front and the posterior at the back. Within that, behind, between the shoulders until the floating rib, that part of the spine which is in between the shoulder blades is the dorsal spine. It's below the neck and above the floating ribs is the dorsal spine. Where the spine takes a curvature here, that below the floating ribs, above the buttock, is the lumbar spine. Between the buttock, there is a flat bone here which goes into a projection, that is the sacrum, flat bone, and the projection, tailbone. This is the length of the spine. All of this is important for every standing pose or any asana that we will look at. Turning to the front, we'll explain some parts of the knee that we need to know. This is the structure of the knee. The knee has 4 corners, 2 at the top, 2 at the bottom. At the front of the knee bone is the patella or the kneecap. The kneecap usually tends to be loose and the quadricep drops in it. We must have the kneecap tightened. The kneecap should be tightened and lifted up. Now we'll take you through how to do Prasarita Padottanasana. We start by keeping the hands in front of the chest, jump opening the leg apart. Keeping your hands in Vimanasana, follow Vimanasana to give the chest an expanse and the spine a lift before taking the hands on the waist. Now, when you stand with your hands on the waist, make sure your chest is lifted, your shoulder is back, your sternum must be starting its action right at its base, going all the way to the top of the sternum. Collarbones that I mentioned should be wide, almost like you're wearing a garland from the center of the throat all the way towards the side of the shoulder. Every fragment of the collarbone must be accessed and then expanded to the side. Back ribs in, elbows knit slightly towards each other. If you have your elbows wide, the chest will drop. So it's necessary to roll the collarbone wide. For that to happen, the elbow must tuck slightly backward. Having the hands on the waist, the entire spine should be lifted. One note of caution, when you jump with your legs apart, it's only for people who have healthy legs. If you have problems with either the hip, knee or ankle, all you will do is step apart, you will not jump apart. Moving on, the entire, as I mentioned, there are 2 parts of the spine, the posterior and anterior. The anterior part of the spine must never drop. It should always be stretched as if you're looking at every fragment of the spine and elongating it little by little until it reaches the topmost part. Having done that, raise the sternum up, roll your shoulders back and extend your chest upward. As you do that, you will go into a position which is more of a back arch or leading to a back arch. You have to lift the chest up. The sternum has to tower upwards, lifting and elongating the anterior throat. After doing that, pulling or leading with the sternum forward, you will have to go to a halfway position where it's not the head that drops. Head will remain up, the sternum will lead forward. If the head drops, the chest will sink. So the head has to be lifted up and the sternum has to lead. In this halfway position, make sure the spine is not collapsing. Even here, the anterior spine must be shooting forward. With that, drop your hands down to the floor, palms cup shaped, having your wrists directly in line with the shoulder. Keeping the hands cup shaped, You see now the sternum is behind the level of the upper arm. You have to endeavor to pull your back ribs in and move your sternum ahead of the upper arms. This can happen only through a very strong and sustained action of the back ribs in, sternum shooting forward, chest extending forward. In this position, a few mentions of the legs anatomy. The outer hip, as I said, should be in line with the outer knee, should be in line with the outer ankle. As far as Prasarita Padottanasana is concerned, right from the time of starting up to going down, the back thigh must be stretched from the inner to the outer corner. That alone will help you access the entire group of hamstring muscles. So from the inside to the outside, there should be a sharp and constant, complete rotation of the thigh inside out. With that, the practitioner then keeps the palm flat on the ground. When the palm flattens, the wrist has to make complete contact with the ground, upon which the dorsal spine should engage and the chest should move forward. For a beginner, while starting, it's common to drag the hip back, as I show you. When you drag the hip back, the outer hip is not in line with the outer ankle. This isolates the area of the pelvis. That should not be done. The outer hip should be built in line with the outer ankle. On the other side, when the chest is asked to move forward, the practitioner then pulls the hip, dragging it all the way forward. This again is wrong because it sinks the lumbar, the lower back, and affects it. You will have to make sure that you are stabilizing the length of the leg where the outer hip or where the head of the femur is sharply in line with the outer ankle. That is a word of caution that we must know. From there, you continue dropping your hands, palms below the shoulder, sharply moving the side of the body, taking the dorsal deeply in, extending the sternum, and then you continue to the full position where you take your hands in line with the heel, you walk your palm back. Continue to always elongate the sternum. In a rush, do not put the head down, that will sink the chest. Extend, extend, extend the spine anteriorly until the extension causes the head to reach the ground. Never suffocate or shrink the spine. Keeping the head in line or with the palms as well as the heel, you then walk your hands back to a right angled position. By right angle, we mean that the upper arm and forearm should form a 90-degree angle where the elbows communicate with each other. It's not where the elbows flare out. The elbows should knit towards each other, keeping the elbows knitting, pressing the palm, raise the shoulder sharply up such that the shoulder doesn't fall or crush the cervical neck. Coming back to the previous position, you walk your hands in front, palms underneath the shoulder. Once again, stretch the head and neck and look forward, and then come up, getting your hands back on the waist. Jump, feet together.
While practicing this asana, I sometimes feel a strain in my hamstring which causes me to bend my knees. What should I do about that?
So usually when there's a strain in their hamstring, people tend to bend their knee, but that's actually not the solution. See, when the hamstring is understretched or not used to being stretched, expanded, elongated, when we don't give it enough movement, over time it tightens. Bending the knee only makes that happen even more. You're actually only making it a habit to tighten your hamstring more. What we should do is actually find a way to stretch, pry open, elongate, expand the hamstring so that it gets used to what it's supposed to do. The muscle is supposed to help in movement, and we have to make it a part of the asana. So we have to figure out a way to avoid bending the knees. We'll go through what we need to do. So first, when you open your legs apart, and when you take your hands down, this is where you say you feel like bending your knees. Yeah. So instead of bending your knees, you have to actually pull the kneecap up, push the thigh back, open the arches and be on the outside foot. That should not be compromised. The aspect of actually pushing the knee back is not about jamming the knee, but it's really about incorporating the knee back in a way that the hamstring muscles can be gently lengthened. Look forward from the knee end to the thigh end. But before that happens, I was talking about widening the muscles of the back thigh. That is critical. You have to make sure that you're not just lengthening. If you go down too quickly and you just tug at the hamstring, there is a snap strain. So before that, you have to make sure that as part of rolling the back thigh inside out, you're actually accessing every bit of the back thigh from the crease of the buttock across the thigh until above the knee, so that the entire sheath of the back thigh opens. Now, when you do that, firstly, you've equally distributed the usage on all parts of the hamstring. Then, instead of taking your hand all the way down, I'd like you to use two blocks. So, you're raising your height. Okay, so when you take your hand down, the hamstring stretches more. To avoid that, keep the hand on a block. Keeping the hand on the block, nicely do the asana where you're pulling the chest forward, elongating the buttock muscle backward, raising the back thigh up and stretching the back hamstrings inside out. Now, if that is also a problem, then you can raise the height of the block where you keep the block at the tallest. What I'm trying to say is it's okay to start from a higher point, but do not compromise on the fact that the hamstrings need to be worked, need to be elongated as well as expanded. So coming to this as level 1, you go down to level 2, one lower level, over time I mean, look forward, chest forward, then flatten the block level 3, again look forward, chest forward, and then finally over the course of time, remove the block with your hand on the ground. Now, this is the concave back position we were talking about. In this concave back position, a student has to train and spend time to open out the leg muscles completely. It is only after this that you lower your head, because that will involve the hamstrings to open further. And so, spending this sequential time, then you take your head down at the same time, rolling as well as elongating the hamstrings. Over time, the hamstring gets used to this work and starts getting used the right way as well.
While doing the pose, I feel I'm straining my back. What can be done to help that?
So you were mentioning that you felt a strain while doing the asana. See, a strain happens when you push the lumbar or lower back a certain way. Let's see how that happens. So open the legs apart. You can go to concave back and then put your arm down. See, very many times elbow straight. Very many times when you're actually lengthening the dorsal forward, chest forward, what a student does is they start pushing on the lumbar spine. The lumbar spine or the lower back is already concave. So when you start to push it, then it starts to strain. So you will have to go to a position where no doubt the chest is engaged and the sternum is stretched, but then the lumbar doesn't drop. The spine should not hang at the lumbar. There you have to pad it in such a way that there is lengthening of the lower back, where the abdomen supports the spine, not this position where the spine crashes into the abdomen. You see the difference? The abdomen has to support the spine, but the dorsal must be engaged. Now, to make that happen, we will discuss prop versions. You can come up. So, if you have a stool at home, a short stool, you can use that. This is what we are using for now. I'm using this and then I'm padding it with a bolster on top. Okay. You have to open your legs wider. Usually the level is where the groin is in line with the bolster. It's still not so much in line. So I am adding a blanket such that we are getting it to level. After doing that, I'd like you to raise your chest up and stretch across the bolster forward. And then place your hand down. You will still try to engage your spine in a concave back position, chin back. But do you see what I'm saying? Initially, the lumbar spine was hanging down. Now you see a nice vertical where the abdomen is nicely supporting the spine. The spine itself is long and not crushed. This prop arrangement helps in aligning the lumbar without collapsing it. You can come up. In case you don't have a stool, then what you can do is stack a pile of bolsters. So as you see, we've removed the stool and we've stacked a pile of bolsters. Now, because it's a bolster, right, you can place the entire length of the spine on it with the hands down. Hands down on the ground first. And you see the entire length of the spine, elbows straight, chest forward, can be leveled linear on the surface of the bolster. An additional thing that you can do with this arrangement is, you can take a blanket, put it for the forehead, and then cross your arms over it. In that way, you can also make a restive pose out of it, delivering Prasarita Padottanasana with nice spinal extension where the head and brain is calmed. We thus saw how Prasarita Padottanasana can be done in two ways, the concave back position as well as the final position with the head down. In the concave back position, we first start with the legs, where the foot is stabilized right from the arch of the foot with the femur bone, with the shin bone, the expansion and extension given to the legs. Over time, because the pose is built on the stability of the legs, the more time you spend doing this pose and the more you practice, it makes the leg unwavering and strong. It builds a lot of focus and stability as far as the legs are concerned. Now, when you move forward, generally when it is a forward bend, as people refer to it, the spine is dropped and the spinal strength is compromised. But in Iyengar Yoga, we don't call it a forward bend. We call it a forward extension, because when you move forward, every single vertebra of the anterior spine must extend, creating a vibrant, strong, long spine. Then as you move forward to the position where your head is rested downward, because your head is rested, it gives an immensely calming effect to your brain as well as your nerves. In the process of going down, it is not so much where you just plop down, but the process involves opening and stretching the paraspinal muscles as you go down. So thus, when the paraspinal muscles are released as you go down, it gives the entire back a calming, soothing feeling, which many times is necessary even to relieve back strain. I cannot understate the importance of standing poses. Standing poses are poses which build great strength in the spine and legs, as we saw. There is a common misnomer that an advanced practitioner's poses are asanas involve a lot of contortions. That's not the case. The more an asana is able to penetrate every single fragment of the body, every single cell of the body, the more advanced it is. So now we are talking about gross areas like the spine, chest, etc. But if you can take the asana to touch every nuanced region, every cell, an asana becomes more advanced. Always practice standing poses, no matter what your level of practice is.
Oh